In a couple of months, Forza Horizon 4 is officially being delisted, and when the news broke back in June, I received about 10,000 comments asking, why? What's going on? What's gonna change? And well, today, I'm gonna try to answer those questions. It's a bit of a loaded question. You'll see what I mean. I can't really give you a straight answer. Before we jump into any of the licensing stuff, though, I feel like I should explain what delisting actually means. So, in December of 2024, Forza Horizon 4 is officially being delisted. And if you already own the game right now, whether it be on the Xbox, on PC, on Steam, whether you have a disc, or if you have it on digital, nothing will change for you. You'll still be able to go into the game, play solo, play online. The servers aren't shutting down. Your experience will not change. The only thing that's changing is you won't be able to go into a physical store or go onto like the Microsoft store or the Steam store and buy a new copy of Forza Horizon 4. That's it. The game is not dying. It's not dead. You just can't buy another copy of it. Side note, you actually won't be able to play Forza Horizon 4 on Game Pass anymore either. However, the developers actually shared this a little while ago. If you have a fully paid Xbox Game Pass subscription as of June 25, you'll actually receive a game token for Forza Horizon 4 that you can go and redeem on your account. It's essentially just like a code for the game that you can redeem, and then it gets added to your account completely for free, which is pretty cool. Anyways, like I said, ever since this news broke a couple of months ago, people have been asking, why is Forza Horizon 4 being delisted? And like I said, in a word, licensing. It's complicated, so let me do my best to explain what's going on and why. So in full disclosure, I myself have a bit of experience with some of these licensing agreements. I have signed licensing agreements, so video games and companies can use AR12 logos before, and I've seen what those licensing agreements sometimes look like, and I've also licensed other people's logos so we can use them in some of our stuff. So I've got a bit of experience on both sides of the licensing agreement. So I'll use some of my knowledge from that to explain what's going on. However, in full disclosure, I've never signed one with Forza before, so I have no idea what sort of stuff they include. So here's the deal. Anytime you want to use somebody else's logos or names or anything like that, you need to get a license for it, and that applies to video games a whole lot. Let me explain it like this, though. Say, for example, you make Xbox controllers, and you want to make an AR12 gaming Xbox controller. You're not allowed to just go and put an AR12 logo on a controller and sell it online and call it the AR12 gaming controller. That's illegal. You're not allowed to do that. However, you are allowed to do it if you get permission from the person who owns the licenses for the AR12 logos. That's me. Anyways, you as the controller manufacturer can come to me and say, hey, I'd like to use your logos, and I get to say one of two things. Either yes, let's work together, and then we can figure out like how much you want to pay me to use my logos, or like I get paid off every controller you sell, whatever. Funny details, doesn't matter. Or I can say, no, I don't want to work with you, and then you're not allowed to use the logo. Basically, it's a way so companies have protection from people using their stuff without proper authorization. And it's because of that, everything is very, very complicated. And how it relates to Forza Horizon 4 is that pretty much everything in Forza Horizon 4 is licensed. Obviously, all of the cars are licensed, all of the music is licensed. All of those things are owned by these big companies, and those companies can choose whether or not they want to work with Forza. But it even goes further than that. It's not only about the cars and the music, it also revolves around the entire map itself and the things you see around the map. For example, the Flying Scotsman, the train in Forza Horizon 4, is a licensed train. That is a real train that was licensed for Forza Horizon 4 by the Science Museum. And you know how we have Edinburgh Castle in Forza Horizon 4 and how you can drive up to the front gates? Edinburgh Castle was also licensed for Forza Horizon 4. That was licensed by the Historic Environmental Group of Scotland. I just realized I got their name wrong, and that's a bit awkward in a video all about licensing. Their name's actually the Historic Environment Scotland Group. All this to say, though, is if Forza Horizon, or any racing game for that matter, wants to put a certain make of car and a certain model of car into a game, they need to go to that manufacturer and get a license agreement for it. And it's those license agreements that are usually very, very complicated, and I've seen them work a bunch of different ways. Sometimes it works like this. Say we, the community, really want a certain car in the game. The developers might recognize that and then go to the manufacturer who makes that car. Say, for example, the brand new Porsche 911 GT3 RS. We would go, hey, we really want the new GT3 RS in the game. Forza goes, okay, got it. Let's see if we can do it. Forza then goes to Porsche and works out a licensing agreement so they can get the legal right to put that car into the game. But it can also work the other way as well. Sometimes certain manufacturers might see the potential of advertising their cars in a racing game. And those manufacturers might approach a developer like Forza and ask and pay the developers to put their cars into the game. It can work both ways depending on what's going on. And sometimes, and this actually happens a lot these days, is there's sometimes mutual benefit for both the game developer and the manufacturer, and they can both be built up by working together. I've actually seen this one happen firsthand. I've worked with some companies who have done just this. I won't name them in this video. They actually have nothing to do with Forza, but I've seen them work like this, where they say, hey, we see benefit from being added into the game, and we think your fan base would also like us being in the game. Here's everything that you need. Here's like all our models, our logos, and everything like that. If you'd like to toss this into the game, feel free. If you don't get around to it, you don't get around. Here's the real kicker though. Everything that I've explained so far is fairly straightforward and makes sense. However, in reality, it doesn't work like that. At the end of the day, every single manufacturer, whether they be a Ford, a Ferrari, a Honda, a Mercedes, it doesn't matter. They want different things out of being added into a video game. Whether it be a third-party manufacturer, they want something different. And at the end of the day, every single licensing agreement is different and unique. And this is where things get a little bit complicated, because obviously you and I haven't seen all of the licensing agreements, and we never will. Let me explain how wild some of these licensing agreements are. One of the big rumors in the whole car industry, and again, there's no way of verifying if this is actually true, but Ferrari is one of the biggest players in the car industry, and because of that, they can be pretty picky about what goes into their licensing agreements. And one of the big rumors is that in the licensing agreement, there is a clause that if you include a Ferrari in a screenshot for your video game, that Ferrari needs to be in front. I don't mean at the front of the photo. I mean it needs to be leading the pack of cars. Again, there's no way of verifying if this is actually true or not, but if you go through a bunch of like old Forza Horizon screenshots, like the official ones, you'll notice a lot of them follow the same sort of trend, and it also goes over to other video games. Have you ever taken a look at the F1 24 cover, for example? It's pretty interesting, and I guarantee the next time a bunch of video game screenshots come out, you'll notice the Ferraris at the front of the pack. Some companies might also have certain stipulations written into their licensing agreements regarding the customization of certain cars. A general big no-no in the car world is you do not mess with the car logo. However, some companies take a more relaxed view to this. You'll notice that in Forza Horizon 4 on things like the Stagia, for example. You can swap the entire logo out with the bumper included. The Mercedes, you can remove the Mercedes logo and put a Brabus logo in instead. Try doing that on a Ferrari though, and we'll see how well that goes. A lot of the time though, licensing revolves around times and time frames specifically. Say for example, you're Cyberpunk and you want to promote the launch of Cyberpunk to the Forza Horizon 4 players. So you go in and toss a Cyberpunk car into Forza Horizon 4 to promote that launch and kind of give Cyberpunk that kickstart with a potential Forza Horizon 4 crossover. You've got the entire marketing department working on that promotion, cross-promotion, Forza Horizon 4, Cyberpunk, and so on, and then after launch, congratulations, that campaign was successful. Everybody working on that has moved on to something else. And sometimes, and actually a lot of the time, when you're working on agreements like this, these bigger companies might actually hire a dedicated marketing company for them, where that company is given a certain amount of money and Cyberpunk says, hey, get our name out there as much as you can. And that company does exactly that, spends all of the money, the launch goes well, and then after the launch, they have no more money to spend. They don't even have people working on it anymore, and they physically can't do anything more with the licensing agreement. And sometimes licensing agreements get a little bit messy because it's not always as straightforward as me licensing you something. Sometimes there's a lot of moving parts on this side of the fence. That happens a lot, and you hear it a lot with the Mercedes McLaren SLR. It's one of the most requested cars in Forza Horizon, but because it is both a Mercedes and a McLaren, that is two companies that you need to have sign the same licensing agreement, and there might be friction over here. So as much as the company, the developer, might want to put the car into the game, these two companies may not want to sign the same agreement. All this to say, though, there's all of these different stipulations and rules when it comes to these licensing agreements, and it gets very, very complicated. But at the end of the day, it all revolves around two key things. Number one, time, and number two, money. I can tell you from my personal experience, all of the licensing agreements that I've signed have always been like, hey, you can use our logos from this time period to this time period. Some might say you can use them for 5 years. Some might say you can use them for 3 years. Some might say you can use them for 6 months, and that's it. And you can go and extend those licenses, but it's not always as simple as that. Because if it was just you and I signing a license agreement, that's pretty easy. We're only 2 people who have to sign a license agreement. But when it's a game like Forza Horizon, where there are literally hundreds of cars in this game, there are tons of aftermarket parts, there are tons of songs. I think there's over 100 songs in Forza Horizon 4. The developers would need to go through every single one of those and get them to sign a new updated agreement. And this is where we go back to what I was mentioning before, because some of those manufacturers and some of those songs might go, yeah, sure, feel free to use our stuff for the next 10 years. We don't care, sign away, whatever. But some of those manufacturers and some of those companies and some of those songs might go, hey, yeah, sure, you can use our stuff, but make sure you pay us again. And some of those licenses get even more complicated than that, because some of those companies don't actually exist anymore. And some of those marketing departments who signed those original agreements aren't working on those things anymore. So there's physically no way to get them to sign them again. I think you can see what I mean, that things get pretty confusing and pretty complicated really quickly. And here's the worst part of all of it. As much as the developers would love to continue selling the game, sometimes it's too much effort, sometimes it's too much money, or sometimes it's straight up impossible. So at the end of the day, it sucks for everybody. So if you want to pick up the game, pick it up before it gets delisted, because after that, you will never be able to. I hope that answers some of your questions. If it did, like this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Have a great rest of your day. All right, have a good one. Goodbye now.